Good evening. I'd like to call the Jail and Law Enforcement and Courts Committee meeting for July 7th to call the meeting to order. Thank you. I'm going to lead us tonight in the prayer and the pledge. So if you would bow your head and pray with me. Heavenly Father, I thank you for loving us. Thank you for blessing us. And I ask a special prayer tonight on all of the county employees. I ask that you be with them and guide them and protect them as they carry out their duties of Washington County citizens. And I also ask for a special blessing on our law enforcement officers, both those with the county and all of the other law enforcement officers and first responders in Washington County. Just be with them and protect them through these very unusual times. And Lord, I ask that for your guidance and your wisdom and your courage on all of the Quorum Court members tonight as we conduct the business of Washington County taxpayers. In Jesus' name, amen. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Miss Patty, would you call the roll so we know who all's here tonight?
Judith Yanez.
Mr. Lester's going to have.
Patrick Deacons.
Here.
And I'll say Judith Yanez again.
Here.
Sam Duncan.
Here.
Chandra Washington.
She's muted.
Here.
Willie Lemming.
Here.
And Ann Harbison. I see Ann is here.
Yeah.
We have a quorum, Dad.
All right.
Becky Lemming, Sam P. Johnson.
Yes, I'm here. All right. Item 3 is adoption of the agenda. I've got 2 additions tonight, if I could get your blessing. Number 1, I learned yesterday that Michelle Cern from NCSC had a preliminary report for us, and I'm going to add her right after approval of agenda so she can go first with your blessing. And then after item 7, I'd like to add a discussion of the Ombudsman's report. So if I could have a motion to approve that amended agenda, I'd appreciate it. Okay, we got a motion by Judith Yanez, second by Willie Lemming. All in favor say aye, or raise your hand. Those opposed, no. The agenda is passed. Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask Michelle Cern to join us if she would and give us the preliminary report on the jail study.
JB Johnson, we've added her, Michelle, as a panelist. I'll unmute her so that she can speak.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. Brian, I also have my colleague Karen Albert with me, scheduled to present as well, and she's here. Can we panelist her too, or no?
Yes, ma'am. I'm doing that right now.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Looks like she's coming on still.
Karen is on now.
Okay. We just have to see her pretty face, and then we're gonna tag team a little bit. Did we lose her? Oh no, there she is. Okay. Karen, are you there?
Yes, I think I'm going to have to reboot. We'll see if I come
Okay.
up with video.
Okay. Are we ready to proceed? Do you want me to start, or should we wait for her to rejoin?
Michelle, it looks like she's in the process of coming back online with us.
Fabulous. Technology is great. There she is.
Thank you.
You're muted though. Okay, I'm going to start. Thank you very much for the opportunity. We don't intend to take too much of your time. Keep this to about 10 minutes or so. We did share a PowerPoint presentation with Judge Wood. So Brian, I don't know if you're going to be able to put that up or not, but that's fine either way. Like I said, we want to be respectful of your time, and we're available to answer questions and respond to them in any way appropriate and consistent with how you do business. You certainly, I think, all have a way to get a hold of us. So if I say anything that prompts some questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Karen or myself with any questions. So with that, Brian, are you able to confirm the PowerPoint or no?
I need to check with IT. I think it was sent to them, and they should be able to share it here in a sec.
Okay. Okay. Fabulous.
Okay, I think you're good.
Okay. Excellent. And then they have control?
That's correct.
Okay. So we'll go to the next slide. We are here today. We're going to present an update and some preliminary recommendations about the things that we've observed and that we're going to be likely recommending in the final report. We engaged in a contract. We responded to an RFP that the county put out. Oh my goodness.
Can't hear.
So Shelley just indicated that her computer just crashed a little bit. Looks like she's trying to get back on, but do we have you, Shelley? If not, I'll go ahead and continue on. We know your time is limited. So I believe it was back in December when we were contracted, and we came and did a site visit in February, and we interviewed, I don't have the total number at hand, but we interviewed easily 30 to 50 people as a part of this process, if not more. So we wanted to make sure that we captured a variety of different stakeholders, whether they be community-based or court-based, jail, local law enforcement. So we've talked to a number of different people, but our analysis really focused on what are some of the best practices and what are the future projections that may impact the decision making. So these decisions really focus on the decision to arrest or not, whether to detain someone in a pretrial status who otherwise might be able to be managed out in the community, whether or not to prosecute an alleged criminal, the decision to release from pretrial detention once someone's already been incarcerated, our decision of whether they are found guilty or not, and what kind of sentence might be appropriate. And then once someone is sentenced, if there is an appropriate modification to the sentencing decision, either an early release, work release, something along those lines. So we are still in the process of finalizing the report, which is going to be a rather lengthy report, but part of the reason we wanted to talk today is just to get some initial thoughts to you all and anything that you might want to see a little bit more of. And so the next slide is really going to take us to some of our observations and key takeaways. I'm going to ask to move on to the next slide that you'll begin to see. And by the way, our statistician, Patrick Jablonski, is probably the most incredible statistician I've ever met in my entire life. But he does love to provide information. So you all will be overwhelmed with even things you weren't even sure you needed to know. But we pulled a couple of his slides out early to show a few of the trends. And if you'll notice, back in 2018, between say April and towards the end of 2018, there was a steady increase of case filings. What's interesting is that there then seems to be a little bit of a drop in the case filings. We don't know why that is. I suspect that part of it may be that this is when local law enforcement was realizing that in essence, there was very limited room at the end. And so they should consider alternatives to incarceration or arrest when they could. But we don't necessarily have the answer to that. So that's one of the pieces that we're still exploring. The next slide shows a little bit of what is happening with your average daily jail population. And you can see that there is a steady incline. And this is despite some of the alternative measures that have been put in place. And again, we will be able to reflect the impact of some of those alternatives as we move forward in the process. But we wanted to just give you an idea of what's happening. So what's interesting here is that even though the case filings were reduced, we see that the population was really on the increase. So in some respects, we'll be looking at how long were people staying in jail, because that will kind of guide us in the information. So the next slide will show us that, and there will be a lot of population information of what's actually happening in Washington County and what's happening with the average daily population. But I think the key takeaway here is that your jail population is actually outpacing the county population. So one of the things I think we heard from every single stakeholder was the county is growing, and the county is growing at a very fast pace. Given that, if there's a continued growth of the jail population, then there are going to be some things that you all will really want to talk about. I'm a firm believer that that a jurisdiction can decide, that has a full range of decision making, and can say, you know what, we're just not going to incarcerate anyone, but we're going to have services in the community if that is the decision we make. On the other hand, we can say, for the safety of the community, we will just incarcerate everyone. Well, that's not realistic, obviously, and that would require a huge number of jail beds. So the answer is somewhere in between that, and that's what you all and the courts really can influence in terms of how these very precious jail beds, the most expensive beds in your community, how these jail beds are going to be used and used for whom. So the next slide will begin to summarize what we found from the law enforcement contingent. And we spoke with both some of the smaller police chiefs, as well as Springdale, some of the larger ones. And because and the next slide will really show that, you know, these local townships really don't have any kind of resource whatsoever in terms of a place to house people. And so they rely heavily on the jail. Every police chief we talked with anticipates an increase in crime. They were very sensitive to the jail crowding and have worked to do what they can to seek alternatives to arrest. There's an element of frustration for them because, you know, someone will go to jail and someone that they think needs to be off the street, and they say the next day that this individual will be back in the community. And so they're dealing with them all, you know, again and again and again. So that is certainly something that, you know, whether it's a supervision issue while someone is out of the facility, or whether additional resources can be provided at the jail, you know, that again is a decision that we'll certainly make some recommendations, but that will be a part of the report. There was actually a general consensus amongst all of the law enforcement, including the sheriff, that the communication among the stakeholders is very, very good. What they were concerned about is that there seemed to be a lack of kind of a coordinated approach for how we deal with these issues. And, you know, whether it is a case processing issue, whether it's we're using the jail too frequently, et cetera. And so that was kind of the general consensus amongst all of the law enforcement stakeholders. So the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the mental health piece of it. That seemed to be the biggest concern for everyone. And the availability or lack of availability of resources, and you all have provided resources, but there are a limited number of beds available. And sometimes, for example, like the crisis stabilization unit, they do have 16 beds, but they won't accept anyone who is suicidal. Well, a lot of the folks who have mental health issues do have a history of suicide attempts. And so, you know, this is an area that needs to be addressed. The alternative at that point is to go to the hospital, which, you know, very limited resources there, or your local jail. And in that case, basically what's happening is the responsibility for managing someone who has a mental health issue is becoming a jail issue rather than a community resource issue. The homelessness is certainly a concern that everyone had. There were several officers who indicated that in some cases, they might just scoot someone down the road. So they might be in another jurisdiction rather than because there isn't sufficient opportunities for homeless shelters. And some homeless are not interested in being in a shelter. So the mental health issue is a very big one. The next slide will kind of get into the court hearings and court case processing. And there are a lot of holdups. For example, the crime lab, that's anywhere from 60 to 90 days. In some cases, if it's a very detailed case, it'd be your murders, things along those lines, some of the results may take up to a year. There's limited between the local law enforcement and prosecutor. There's a lot of handwriting, stubby pencil, you know, sending arrest warrants through the mail, et cetera. And there's a lot of follow-up that occurs because some of the paperwork is not making it. The court calendaring, well, I'm just going to let you all say it. The court calendar process is a manual process right now. So people have to either contact the clerk or the judicial assistant or actually show up to see where there is availability. And so that's an area, the IT generally is an area that could really use some support. There are wonderful attempts to, if someone is in custody or if someone is willing to plea out a case, they will try to work those cases in. So that has not been an issue. And I will say, and this is not uncommon nationally, but cases do tend to move slowly, and continuances are frequently granted. And, for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's the prosecutor, sometimes it's the defense bar, but each one of these continuances slows down the overall process, and in some cases keeps people in jail for a longer period of time, which increases your average length of stay and therefore your bed needs. Now, the juvenile justice system that's addressed on the next slide is in pretty good shape. They have an assessment, risk assessment, that they use to determine whether a youth or a juvenile really needs to be detained in the facility. And that has been a great help. So they are able to keep their population down. They also, you all have funded a tremendous number of alternatives for the juvenile system. And so there are plenty of resources in the community available to the youth. So that system really seems to be working very well in the system. Your jail system, the next slide will kind of summarize that there are actually two facilities. One was intended to be the work release center, and the other one intended to be the primary jail. So, I just use a rule of thumb that if you are looking at the age of facilities, your jail, which was constructed in 2004, is really the equivalent of a 67-year-old school or office building that might be used from, say, 9 to 5, 8 to 5, something along those lines, 5 days a week. And so the jail gets more wear and tear than any other facility. The population has exceeded capacity for quite some time. It creates problems in terms of classifying people. The rate of incidents nationally tend to go up. Because of the crowding, the work release center it is now holding minimum custody folks. So, the classification of the facilities is not really meeting the security needs. And in the jail, there's some limited programming that is available, but it is rather limited. And what we found was interesting is that just about all of the stakeholders, even law enforcement, and you don't normally hear positive statements from law enforcement about reentry planning, but just about everyone referred to the Women's Reentry Center that I know is on you all's property and you were leasing it out. But we toured that facility as well, and it really does provide a terrific model for programs that can be available to reduce the incidence of recidivism in the community and to properly prepare people. Now, this is a prison focused reentry center, but again, if the services are already in place in the community, a lot of them can be transferred to the jail population. So I'll talk for a minute about the impact of crowding on the jail, which is the next slide. And there have been some programs that have been implemented. The Ombudsman Project, the Bail Project, and something interesting about those two is that there appears to be a return to jail rate that is fairly high. But what it doesn't show, what the data doesn't show, and what we were able to glean from the data available is the return to jail rate, is that because someone is now serving their sentence, or is it because there was a new crime or a new charge that someone is charged with? So that's some information that, you know, you want to peel that onion a little bit and find out what's happening. The prosecutor does authorize the jail administrator to release certain inmates of certain charges on their own recognizance following booking, which both that practice and the 2 days credit for every 1 day served is not something that law enforcement is very pleased with. They say, we finally get a conviction, or we finally get someone off the streets to keep our community safe, and then they are out the next day or a couple of days later. So that was a concern for law enforcement. And again, I will say that every police chief we spoke with said the jail is doing everything that they can. Everyone is doing everything that is perfectly reasonable, but it hasn't solved that one issue. So not surprisingly, COVID certainly has had an impact on the criminal justice system, along with the impacts of everything else. And the next slide kind of summarizes a few of the issues that have been identified. And so right now there are no in-person court appearances. This is typically a concern for the defense bar. So they are reviewing cases and releasing folks as much as they can. The population is the jail population is almost half of what it was before. But in speaking with folks, there's very little confidence that the measures that are being used to respond to COVID will be in place once we get this COVID issue under control. So they have implemented electronic monitor for offenders who have failed to appear. So, the jury is still out on that one, whether it's, we know that offender X is in his home, but does he have his drug deals occurring there in his home? So, it solves some problems, doesn't solve others, but that's part of the overall consideration. So the next slide will indicate a couple of recommendations that we are looking at this point. I believe all of you received a copy of the SIM document that shows the resources available at all levels from the decision to arrest to release. And we think that model should be developed further with more detail, and it will show you where some of the gaps are in providing services if that's the route you go. So we would see that as a living document. The Criminal Justice Coordinating Council is, I believe, overseen by the sheriff right now. We would suggest that, and that, the sheriff's doing a fine job. Everyone has said the sheriff is doing a fine job, but, it almost can appear, and this is my experience working nationally with other jurisdictions, that it appears that the sheriff has a stake in what this Criminal Justice Coordinating Council recommends, because he has a jail, and the jail is crowded. And so of course the sheriff is going to want to add beds to the jail. So if there's an objective party, whether it's someone in the community, human services, or, sometimes the clerk of the court might be the appropriate person, that's a decision for you all to make. But we would recommend that an objective party coordinate that effort. It might give more credibility to the overall effort. We do think some of the things that you all have put in place have been extremely successful and should continue and be evaluated to determine the degree of success and how you might want to move forward with these and similar programs. one significant lack that we saw as a part of the overall criminal justice process is the lack of a pretrial release program. And this program, including things such as monitoring, drug testing, checking in with defendants to remind them of court dates. And all of us who are on this call are responsible people. And we say, well, we mark our calendar and we go to court when we're supposed to. But history and experience will tell us that this population doesn't always have that same sense of organization that we may have. And so that program, we do think, would be a tremendous resource to get people who can be managed in the community, but just need a little bit of extra supervision, that can take place in the community rather than the jail, and that will save you a tremendous number of beds. We would argue continue the electronic monitoring program. This, if nothing else, it conveys to the arrestee or the alleged offender that they are being monitored and they need to kind of walk the line. We would also argue that that to the degree that data collection can be streamlined and available across all of the stakeholders, so that they can see the impact. And I'll provide one example. I know the jurisdictions used to pay a booking fee, and I believe it was Springdale that went from, I think it was more than this, but from 10,000 to 3,000 arrests. Well, now the fee is based on a per capita basis. So, you know, the police chief indicated, no, that's not going to impact the number of arrests they make. But as a human being, I think we could all see that if we're going to pay the same amount of money, whether we take someone to jail or find an alternative, the easy answer is perhaps just take them to jail. So, you know, some of that information, you know, we don't have the answer at this moment, and certainly have some recommendations, but these are the types of things that data can really provide us, so that the system is making decisions rather than one component or the other. And then also, last but not least, certainly, is providing seamless programming. You have community resources that and services that are being provided to the population of arrestees and folks who are in your jail. They get assessed as a part of this this process. When they come to jail, they get reassessed. When they go back into the community, they get reassessed. So if there is kind of a streamlined, seamless programming, if I am in the community today with mental health issues and my mental health provider is able to meet with me in the jail, and then after I am released, that's going to cut down on a lot of inefficiencies in the system. So I will ask if there are any questions. And again, our report is going to be very comprehensive and go into tremendous detail in all of these areas. But we really appreciate the opportunity to get this information out a little bit ahead of time to see if there are some areas that we just need to focus a little bit more heavily on.
Thank you, Ms. Albert. If we've got time, if there's some brief, quick questions, we'll entertain them. Miss Patty is going to send this PowerPoint presentation to all the JPs tomorrow, so you will have it and have some time to review it and digest it, and then maybe formulate some more questions. Anybody got any questions tonight? JP Yanis. Mr. Lester, can you unmute Justice Yanis?
Thank you, Lance. JP Johnson. Karen, thank you for the information. I have a quick question, just curiosity. On the jail population and the county growth, I assume the dashed line was a trend line?
It was.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
just
that
because
would-
I noticed, like the population was higher than the actual trend line. And one of the things we're always saying is our population is growing. So therefore, the inmate population is going to grow. But in actuality, that trend line is showing, what the growth should be. Are we going to get additional data to see what's happening there?
Yes, JP Yen, as you, I'm glad you brought this up, because what we did not provide today, the data that we show, the few slides that we showed, were just data up to basically the end of 2019. What Patrick will do is then project that out based on the information, historical information, but also any adjustments that we know we can anticipate. And so he will be able to project this out. And I think Michelle is muted and it looks like she's frozen still, but I believe the projections will go at least 10 years out, if not 20.
And will we get detailed information of what's happening, or is it just a projection?
So, so Patrick will identify all of the assumptions that were used in calculating the projections. If we know that certain things are going to happen, for example, there will be a new plant opening up and we're expecting 1,000 new residents within the next 10 years. That's information that would be very helpful to know now, so he can incorporate that into the projections.
Great, thank
Right
you, Karen.
now, it's just based off of the trend line and what he knows is growing. So he'll be able to take it to a level of what is the age group that's growing, in much more detail. So what those trends would typically be both nationally and locally.
Great, thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Well, thank you, Karen and Michelle. I'm glad you could join us tonight, and we will review this information and we'll be waiting anxiously for your final report. Thank you. Item number 4 on the agenda is the juvenile detention report. Is Director Collins with us tonight?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Hello, everyone. There's really not much for me to say on this report. Our numbers are down right now. As of today, we only have 14 residents. The report reflects. Did you have a question? Did someone have a question? I'm sorry. Okay. The number of transports that we've done in the month of June has been thus far the lowest this year. We've only had 7 transports. And average daily intake has been down. It's been 0.93 with only 28 intakes in the month of June. And right now we're currently only holding 1 adult charged juvenile.
Okay, are there any questions for Director Collins? Seeing none, thank you, Director Collins, for your report. We'll see you in a month, hopefully.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, item number 5, the Sheriff's Office's report. Is Chief Deputy Cantrell with us tonight?
Yes, Chairman.
Jay Cantrell here. The enforcement report, nothing out of the ordinary to report on. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about that that submitted report.
Are there any questions? It looks like the activity is down significantly, which is to be expected, I guess.
Yes, sir. Civil papers are down some. You've probably seen some of the news stories that they are expecting an uptick in evictions. And so we haven't seen that yet, a large increase in writs of assistance or writs of possessions, but that could be coming down the pike at some point.
All right, are there any questions for Chief Cantrell? Okay, Major Densler, are you with us?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm here, Randall Denzer.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Well, we're trying to keep our daily average down around 400. You see that we're just barely doing that. The numbers are down, but trying to keep that number so we have enough quarantine blocks to make everything work on our intakes. We're still doing some the transports. The prosecutor and the judges have helped us tremendously about keeping our count down and putting people out on ankle monitors. Our biggest increase probably is our parole violators. Like we're up to 45 parole violators, which brought our count back up. We was around 350 to 375. On our bed count is about 50-50 pre-trial, and the rest are committed and there are other charges. So it's about 200 of each. And then on the last part, the snapshot is just about exactly as the monthly report. This high count was 413 at 9:30 in the morning, and everything else is staying just about the same. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions for Major Densler? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to item 6. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Item 6 is the update on the status of the 287G program. Is the sheriff or Jay or who's going to give that update?
I'm here, Lance. Tim Helder.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good to see everybody. There is no update. We haven't participated in 287G since I informed you all that we would not be renewing our contract. So I'm not sure. I guess I need to respond to questions to see what angle we're coming from on that question, maybe.
Has anybody got a specific question?
JP Deacon and JP Yanez, Mr. Chairman.
JP Deacons and then JP Yanez.
Thank you, Sheriff Helder. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my my thought process here with this agenda item is I understand that the program has been suspended, but I just want to kind of learn, what did that change on you guys' end from the jail operations standpoint, if anything significant? Can you kind of just walk us through that?
Sure. So what we did, we had two deputies that were primarily assigned to the 287G program. And once we got to a point where we really figured that this was pre-COVID and everything, that we were kind of at a stalemate as to whether we were going to be able to move forward with the expansion of the jail or anything. and with consistent overcrowding, we felt like it was time to move in a different direction. So when we discontinued the contract, basically I took the 2 employees that had primarily been assigned to that and tasked them with coming up with some creative ideas on how we could keep our numbers down, or at least slow the process. And then of course COVID hit, and it became all the more meaningful to us at that point. It gave us a little bit of breathing room and time as our numbers went down for them to process and develop plans as to how we might move forward doing that. So to kind of put it in a nutshell, what that looks like from our perspective, it might be similar to the probation folks and parole folks that when they put people on ankle monitoring systems, then they basically in-house monitor their activities and give them guidelines and then follow up about their court dates. We're talking about primarily dealing with pretrial and failure to appear folks is who we're going to be dealing with, the ones that we've all been talking about for so long. We developed that criteria. We are ready to move forward. We have entered into a contract. And I believe, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we glommed on to the state contract, and we got the price down to like $2 and almost $3 per ankle monitoring device, where up till now we've been having to pay through third party in anywhere from $8 to $15 a day for them to monitor and do all that stuff. So we're going to have quite a significant cost savings as we move forward with our own in-house system. Our hope is that we can continue to keep our numbers down and have hands-on deputies that are keeping up with folks. And I think we'll have a greater deal of success of getting them to show up at court and to do the things that they need to do. And obviously we're going to be very judicious in who we select for this program, you know, no violent offenders and things of that nature. We've been working hand in hand with the prosecutor's office, and we made Judge Lindsay aware that we were delving into this, and he suggested we continue to work through the prosecutor on identifying the appropriate clientele. So we're now waiting for our first shipment of ankle monitors to come in, and probably what we'll do during the pilot process of this is to probably glom on to some of these folks that are already on ankle monitors, bring them in so that we can kind of spread our wings, so to speak, and figure this process out from an internal perspective, and then grow the program slowly, because we want to do it right. We want to learn from our mistakes, but we want to grow it slowly. And then hopefully by the time the numbers start going up significantly, we will be able to take on more and more of this classification of defendant, you know, keeping our fingers crossed. But I think that's, short of any questions, I think that's kind of a pretty solid.
And this might have been a misunderstanding that I just heard from the NCSC report, but there are programs that we're doing now during the COVID outbreak, and there are programs you're implementing and lessons you're learning that will be applicable after COVID is gone, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sheriff Elder.
You're welcome.
Justice Yanni.
Thank you, Chairman. Hi, Sheriff Helder. So I have 2 questions. Can we talk a little bit about the financial implications about not having the 287G program?
The financial implication, like as far as what it will cost the county, or what we'll save?
Either one.
Well, so as I've stated previously, the only expenses that we incur are the employees. You know, their primary function was to do that, but they also had other functions within the jail. And then whatever, the meals or whatnot. So we're going to save it in that venue, but I'm taking those people and moving them into another specialized program. So it's one program to another.
Okay, and then how would it affect the SCAB? I think it's the SCAB grant, right?
The SCAP grant,
Yeah.
it literally has nothing to do with 287G. It's still going to be figured on the number of foreign-born people that come through our facility. So I guess the future will tell the tale on that, but I just don't see it changing a whole lot. Because the number of arrests, you understand that if they're arrested and they come through our facility, whether 287G is in place or not, it really boils down to the foreign-born status. And Jack's sitting here, and if I'm misstating, that's an accurate assessment. He gave me a thumbs up on that. So basically, 287G is a program aside and apart from SCAP. They have nothing to do with each other. I know that whenever we were dealing with 287G and SCAP came through, everybody kind of got up in arms about it, saying that they were related. But I think you'll find out in short order the two have nothing to do with each other. That money will still come in.
Okay. And then, so if we have an undocumented individual that commits a heinous crime, is ICE still operating within the jail?
ICE is still here in our community. They certainly have access to all the records that they had prior to this. It's just that we are no longer processing those records and making notification.
Okay, so what would happen to that individual within our jail system?
ICE would still, it would be fairly similar in that if they develop enough information to determine that person is in this country as undocumented or illegal, whatever terminology you'd like to use, and there's sufficient evidence for them to put a detainer on, that it's still the same. It's just we're out of the process.
Okay. I'm getting more questions as you speak, just, so I apologize.
Sure.
Not really, but so if you're not giving this information to ICE, it's just a matter of public records at this point then?
Yeah, they have access, just like any other agency, to arrest records, and they can access that information on their own. Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much, Sheriff Helder.
Hey, you're welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, we'll go on to item 7. And Sheriff Helder, are you going to cover this one also?
I don't know. I don't have an agenda in front of me. What is it?
It's an update on the 8 additional jail personnel approved in the 2020 budget.
Sure. So we hired, we hired those prior to all this smacking us in the face. And as time went on and our numbers went down, I worked with the judge and all the full-time elected officials about the financial impact that we were potentially seeing coming our way through this COVID economic downturn. And so we had volunteered prior to all that I think, Lance, I had told you this early on, that we were going to do a self-imposed hiring freeze here. And we've held to that ever since this began. I think that I was told on the quarterly sweep that I think we're at, maybe it wasn't quarterly, maybe it was 6 months, but it was $340,000 or so, $360,000. So it looks like if this goes on to the end of the year, and with the hiring freeze that we have put in place, that basically we had to develop a sweet spot, that we could still conduct business and in a safe manner, but our numbers do allow us not to have as many people on board. So it probably, to come full circle with your question, they were hired, but we obviously don't have to have that many in booking now, so they've been reassigned, but those positions, they were filled. But we have 10 open slots that I've put that freeze on. So we're going to continue to have 10 openings. Plus, I was made aware in the last couple of weeks that we've got 2 active duty military that are they're going to be deployed for long term. So, you know, technically on the jail side, we're going to have at least 12 openings from here until this ends. And that's probably going to look like about $1 million overall. I don't know if you want to say it's a savings or it's just money that's been allocated that won't be spent on salaries and all the benefits.
All right, thank you, Sheriff. Are there any other questions?
Lance, I just mentioned the jail, but we're also doing a freeze on the enforcement side. Between dispatch and patrol, I think we've got a total of 7 positions that we're not filling until the calls for service indicate that we need to fill those. And so we're trying to do the responsible thing and save the county some money. So
That appears to be prudent to me.
yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we're going to item 8. And Justice Deakins, do you want to introduce this, the discussion on the uptrust system?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted this put on the agenda just to keep the members of the court informed on what's possible and what's going on. This is coincidentally coincides very well with what we just heard from the NCSC. There's a program out there called Uptrust. And what this program is, and we have some people online here. We have Leanna Houston from the Public Defender's Office, and we also have Sean Riley, who is with Uptrust. He's the Director of Partnerships. What this program is it's an email and or text message reminder system for clients of the Public Defender's Office so that they can be reminded of court dates and any proper news that needs to go out, be disseminated on a mass scale or on an individual scale. And time allowing, I would like for both Leanna and Sean to be able to speak to this, but here's what I've been able to learn from this is this company is willing to come into Washington County and give us a year free of this service, basically no obligation. They want to come in and it coincides and implements with Defender Data, which is the software that the Public Defender's Office uses to manage their court and client system. And it'll plug right into that. And there's a holdup because the state public defenders at the state level is accessing this program too, to see if it would be a solution for the statewide. But what I'm really wanting everybody to hear tonight and hopefully get on board with is I would like for Washington County to move forward with this on its own. Mr. Riley has expressed that Uptrust is willing to partner with Washington County only and move forward. And you know, the other thing I would like to highlight for everybody is this is, once again, not a silver bullet to our overcrowding issue at our jail that we've seen before, but it's another tool that we can put in our toolbox. And I think Ms. Patty sent out some materials from Uptrust to the Quorum Court members today, which show some statistics and some savings. What this is made to do is lower your FTAs, your failure to appears, your technical violations, so that those people are not re-entering your jail system. They're you know, participating in the court system like they're supposed to be. So with that, I would like to turn it over. If you guys have any questions, let Ms. Houston maybe update us on where Washington County is in this process and how we can help them get this off the ground. This would be something that would be owned and housed by the Public Defender's Office. So they need our support. They need our push to try to help get this underway.
Mrs. Houston?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me to speak and for your support of our office. We have worked with Sean. He's worked with the Defender Data, which is our programming system before. So I don't think it will take much for them to be able to link in with our system to access our information on our clients as far as their phone numbers and how to contact them. I see this as more important now than ever because of the times that people are having their court cases reset right now. And I'm afraid that because of all of the resets and the extended time, that there are going to be more failure to appears than ever in the future. And I see this as a way to help limit that and prevent it. And they would send text reminders to everybody frequently. We have already worked with them on what the text messages would say. It can remind them to stay in touch with us and to call us, as well as remind them of their court dates. And they also, one of my big concerns has been a lot of our clients, their phone numbers change frequently, and they have a system where they continue to ping the numbers so that if it is changed, they know it pretty quickly. And for the first year, it would be free. I have not been able to get a response from Greg Parrish in Little Rock about whether the state would pay for this. And if they would later, maybe we could have them take it over. But for now, it would be free for the first year. And then after that, I think the amount was $450 a month. Is that right, Sean?
That's correct.
And we've already got a contract, and I could go ahead and send the contract to the county judge for approval with no obligation from the Quorum Court at this time. And that's where we are.
Sean, I'd also like you to speak to this, but this also comes, you guys are going to do full implementation and training for this program for the Public Defender's Office. This isn't going to be something that we download and have to plow through ourselves. That's correct, right?
Yes, that's correct. So the unique thing about the UpTrust system is that the text messages are two-way in nature. So not only does a text message go to a client to remind them of their court date, but they can respond to that text message, and it goes to their attorney. So if somebody is, let's say, in the hospital and can't make their court appearance, that information can be given to the court so that we're not issuing warrants when they don't need to be. And it also allows an attorney another avenue of communication with a client to get them to court for their court appearances. We work with about 200 public defender offices around the country, and we've been able to reduce the failure to appear rate in each of those jurisdictions by about 50%.
Great. So my whole point here is I want other justices to please educate yourselves on this. From my seat, this looks like a no-brainer. Especially with the unique challenges that we're seeing in Washington County right now. I have no interest in waiting for the state to make a decision. This will give us a year to have data. We can keep data on this and see if this was a benefit to the county or not when we have to make the funding decisions in the future. And I think that would be very beneficial to us.
Okay. Justice Deakins, am I correct? This is an agreement that will have to be entered into by the county judge?
Yes, sir. That's my understanding.
Okay.
I have seen a draft agreement that UpTrust had sent us before. It's pretty straightforward, but of course we'd want the county attorney and the judge to assess that. I actually had a Zoom meeting with Mr. Riley yesterday morning to kind of go over some of this, and it looked, I got very excited about it. And he promised us the first draft agreement said we would implement in April and we would have a year from there. But he said that UpTrust is very flexible and our year time would start after it's implemented and we've been trained. And so we would have a full year of what we would consider full accessibility and service of the product.
Okay. Well, I think for sure this committee ought to encourage the judge to enter into this agreement. Justice Yanis.
Just be muted.
Mr. Lester, would you unmute Justice Yanis?
Thank you. Thank you, JP Deakins, for looking into this. It sounds great, but I have a quick question. So for those clients that do not have a cell phone or would not have access to electronic device, do you guys have any experience with that you can speak about?
Well, in addition to text messaging, we can also do email as well. So between the email and the text messaging, we're covering about 96% of the population. There is going to be a percentage of the population that we won't be able to reach, and that's unfortunate. And what we do is work with each jurisdiction to see where that population is and if there are things that we can do to reach that population as well.
Thank you.
If I may add something, that's a very good question, because in my experience, I have found their email can be more consistent than phone numbers. because they can get email for free, and then wherever they are, check it from time to time. And so I'm glad that they are doing that, because I find that that's a more consistent way sometimes to stay in contact with our clients.
Great. I appreciate you both. Thank you.
Thank you. Justice Washington, do you have a question? Mr. Lester?
Yes, I have a question. So just a moment, a question about the cost in the document, and I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. I just jotted down some notes that the initial integration cost was $20,000 and the annual cost was $35,624. But someone just mentioned an amount of $450 a month. Is that $450 per individual or $450 for an entire month? I was just unclear on that.
So the integration cost for Washington County is waived because we work with defender data so frequently with our sites that it takes no work at all for us to integrate with defender data, which is why Washington County is sort of an ideal site for us to work with. As far as the monthly service cost, it's $450 a month for text messages to all the clients served by the Washington County Public Defender Office.
Okay. So what was the $35,624?
I'm not sure what document you're looking at, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't access it right now. So
Excuse, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I guess once the meeting is over, I'll go back and look at it and just direct my question directly to you. But I just jotted down an annual cost of $35,624. So I was just wondering, that's a big, huge difference between $450. So I just wanted to ask about that. The second question that I had was, one of the things that one of the goals is to build a type of predictive model and to also generate other economic solutions for people that utilize this service. And I just would like to know at the county level, what economic solutions are we prepared to provide? I think in the document, it mentioned something that if they needed a ride, they could they could use this system to contact you. But I would just like to know as a county, what economic solutions are we prepared to provide?
So for instance, if a jurisdiction is one where transportation is a huge issue, and we're able to find through our work that a significant portion of the population is not getting to court because it takes them 3 hours on a bus to get there and they don't have the ability to make it to court because of those transportation issues. What we do is we seek out grant assistance. So with Dallas County in Texas, we've sought out grant assistance to get Uber rides for people to court. That live outside a certain geographic proximity to the courthouse to help them get to court. So those are the sorts of things that we're talking about. It's studying the population.
I guess so my specific question is who is responsible for paying for that service? Would we expect Washington County to pay for it? Like who is going to pay for that? I understand the solutions, but who's going to finance that?
We would seek out grant funding from philanthropic organizations.
So when you say we, you mean your company or?
Yes, Uptrust.
Okay, those were the only questions I had.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Leanne and Sean, for joining us tonight. We'll get back.
Lance, can you hear me? I'm sorry, my computer wasn't working. I think JP Duncan had indicated he had a question, and then JP Yanez has a question as well.
JP Duncan?
Yes, just curious, does the $450 a month, does that cover email as well, or is that exclusively text messaging?
It's email and text messaging. It covers all of our service. There's no additional cost.
Okay. And then second question is, Chairman, what would be the appropriate motion to make? Would it be a resolution to encourage the judge to enter into a contract, or what would be the appropriate motion?
Well, I think we need to do a little research, Justice Duncan, because the public defender's function is generally paid for by the state. And we probably ought to look at that and see if that is an option and see if the state's willing to pay that. Other questions, comments? All right, thank you all. We'll move on.
JP Yanez, JP Johnson.
Okay, JP Yanis, do you have a question? She's
No,
shaking.
I was going to say JP Duncan had a question, so I'm good. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
All right, are we ready to move on? Item 9, I did not receive the ombudsman's report prior to putting together the agenda. I think Miss Patty has sent you his report and 2 or 3 other documents since the agenda was published. Does anybody have questions or comments on any of this? Justice Yanis.
Is he here to speak on the report?
I don't know.
He is, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like for me to allow him to talk, I'll do so.
Yeah, line him up and we'll ask him questions.
Good evening. I think I'm unmuted. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir. Justice Yanis has a question for you, sir.
Sure.
Mr. Lester, would you unmute Justice Yanis?
Well, I really didn't have a question. I thought he was going to go through the report.
Do you want him to go through the report for you?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening. And again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, JPs, for adding me to the agenda. When the meeting was first scheduled last week, I saw the meeting, but I didn't see the Ombudsman report as an item on the agenda, which pretty much every month since I began in August and September, it had been a monthly report. So again, thank you for kind of playing a little bit catch up to distributing the report and a couple of attachments. And I'll try and go through as quickly and as briefly through my report, and also kind of look to the future and certainly take any questions. Since March is really kind of the watershed date, really when things pretty much shut down, the Ombudsman report, the court shut down, we ceased going into the jail directly. We still worked with the bail project, and we worked with judges and prosecutors on individual cases, but I would say in a fairly scaled down way. And then that's what we've been doing. I also lost my right arm, so to speak, when the university, the law school kind of pulled in all their externs, again, in view of the COVID crisis. So again, we case by case, we've been more on a limited basis, but we still have. And the people that I've seen on referral from various people have kind of continued what had been my impression, which I've reported to the Quorum Court previously, that most of the people that I see, I do not see people facing armed robbery charges, murder charges, high-end felonies. The people that I've seen have been people that by and large do not kind of cast a dangerous profile, certainly. And if there are compliments to go all around in what the jail did with the help of the courts and the police, as far as cutting its population approximately in half. That really took a concerted effort. As has been noted, the population has been kind of inching up. So again, we've been still involved in the jail, but in not nearly the volume or intensity that we had. Now, I came into this project, into this role, as a result of the overcrowded population in the jail, with numbers, dozens of inmates, of detainees sleeping on the floor. Since I've begun, Again, I've had a fairly steady stream of people I've been able to release, I think with good results. And also shortly after I began, the bail project came onto the picture as well. And what they have that I don't is money. So they've been able to get people out on a much larger scale. We started out trying to get the population down. I hate to say it, it kind of took a pandemic to do it. And I don't offer that critically to anybody, but now we have the intersection of two crises. We have the population in the jail, and now just in the last week and a half, it's been reported that there are detainees at the jail who have tested positive, which again only kind of gives me that much more urgency to try and again work with the courts, the prosecutors, to try and get whoever is felt to be not an undue risk, undue danger, to find a way to get them out. That is still going on. And again, I put this in the report. It really was a concerted effort to get the population down to where there are now no longer any people sleeping on the floors, on the mattresses. My job, I see as doing my best to see that to the extent that I've got the power to recommend anything, to see that continues. We don't want to come back to the bad old days of a year ago. With the population being down, I think there's some opportunities there, and I put this in my report in item 1C, which has to do with treatment. We now have the community clinic, and just in the past year, since again I began operation, we've got the crisis intervention center. So I think we've got resources that we didn't. And again, to the extent that a lot of people I see, I think the sheriff calls them frequent flyers, in and out, people who keep getting into problem, not into trouble with the law, not again, serious felonies. They're in and they're out, so many of them. Mental health issues, substance abuse issues. I think we have an opportunity here. And I reported that to you, that we have an opportunity to try and coordinate things, pull some strands together, so that someone's issue is mental health or substance abuse. Maybe that can be that can be addressed. So bottom line there is that I've been in touch with Sheriff Helder and with Deputy Cantrell, and they are tentatively scheduling a meeting to talk treatment resources, which everybody has been talking out in August, and I've offered to kind of help take the reins on that. One other thing, present tense, and then I want to talk briefly future tense. Present tense, again, I've been saying since I began, maybe you all are tired of hearing me talk about buried alive bonds, the problem of FTAs, setting bonds in amounts that really you see in other jurisdictions that are more appropriate for violent felons. And we see people, if they fail to appear without justification, again, we see a lot of these bonds set and long continuance dates, which again has maybe unintended consequences. That backs up space in the jail. And what I submitted in March, which my intern deputy prepared, was just an astonishing spreadsheet that at the time there were, I think the number is about 135 persons in on those kinds of bonds. Some of them dangerous, some of them not. And I won't go into great detail here as well. There are some developments in the law that are kind of calling this practice as a across the board practice into question. I mentioned the case in the Nevada Supreme Court. Again, time is short, but I think it's a question of time before there would be some kind of judicial challenge to those processes. I am your ombudsman. I work for the county. I would not, it would be a pretty blatant and inappropriate conflict for me to be directly involved in that, but I think that's a common thing. What I think I've succeeded in doing is kind of increasing an awareness across the board, judges, prosecutors, maybe of unintended consequences of these practices. I did a quick scan of the population of the census just a couple of days ago. I think that number is now down to 25 or 30. So I think the message is getting across. And again, just getting those people out were enough to get people off the floors and everybody into beds in the jail. Now, lastly, kind of where do we go from here? I've been submitting monthly invoices. The original appropriation was $15,000. I'm down to about $2,000 or $3,000 of that. That money is going to end, and I've been trying to pinch pennies as best I can. But I think there are basically three choices that the Quorum Court has. Maybe y'all can think of some more. Choice number one is we don't have anybody sleeping on the mattresses anymore. The immediate population crush is over. Thank you, Ombudsman Edelman, for your service. And I think we can go on from here. So one option is to just cease or discontinue the program whenever the appropriation expires. Second option, I think that I've adverted to in my report, ties right in to the National Center for State Courts and their forthcoming report. And in fact, I just saw from their presentation, they would be inclined to recommend that somebody be the person to pull those reins in together, some objective person. And whichever way the Quorum Court wishes to proceed, I'm not looking to kind of cut off any kind of competitive process, but I would just in short, I would love to do that for you, and maybe continue the ombudsman functions as well. So one option would be to kind of expand the purview, the ombudsman functions, and then adding in as a person to implement the National Center for State Court functions. And kind of the in-between option is just to keep the ombudsman project more or less as is. Again, the original allocation is about to run out. And let me just finish by going back to my original conversation with Tim Helder, which is when he recruited me to come back to this position, which I had occupied in 2002 to 2001. What I told Tim and what I told you all when this kind of came together was that I'm interested in doing what I can for the county in this role. My only caution, my only caveat was that we don't have to agree on everything, but fundamentally that we all have to be on the same page. And it seems from what I'm hearing tonight, different ways of coming at it, but I think we are on basically on the same page. So again, I'm offering to continue, if that's your wish, if that's your pleasure. I'm offering to continue in an expanded role and capacity, or if it's your determination that that the ombudsman program has served its purpose, then that certainly, I respect whatever you decide to do.
Thank you for your report, Dr. Edelman. Am I correct that the performance period of your current agreement with the county is ended?
Yes, it has. And I had a conversation with Judge Wood and with Brian Lester about that a couple of weeks ago, because the way the contract is written, June 30th or whenever the appropriation is exhausted would be when my contract is up, just kind of informally. And Brian, you can, I think you can speak to this informally, pending any further guidance or decision from the justices of the peace, I said I'd be happy to continue, kind of pending a further and final decision.
I haven't been recognized all that.
I wasn't hearing that. I'm sorry. Okay, so that was conversation about a week and a half ago I had with the county judge and with the county attorney, just to stay in place before this committee, and I suppose in turn the full quorum court should decide how best to proceed.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions or comments?
JP Harbison.
JP Harbison?
Okay. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I think that we need all the tools in the box that to tackle the jail situation. I really was, I really like JP Deacon's work and working with the public defenders, but I think we need the ombudsman to continue. We go on and continue his contract at the $15,000 for this next year.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody on the committee that has a comment?
I made a motion.
Justice Harbison, you're not a member of the committee.
Yes, I am.
Okay, excuse me. I'm sorry. Restate your motion.
I make a motion that we hire Stan Edelman for an additional year to as an additional tool in our box dealing with the jail situation.
Okay, and then your motion is to recommend this action to the Quorum Court. Is that correct?
The motion has to go through a committee first.
I understand that. My question.
Yes.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Justice Yanez, second. Is there discussion? Justice Deakins? Mr. Lester?
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think anybody's been as rabid about this issue as probably I have been. I'm apprehensive about extending this at this particular time, though, for a couple of reasons. I think the Ombudsman program over the last year has been a success, but I also think that we're seeing, from the court study that we've seen preliminary tonight and what we've heard from our Ombudsman, are systemic problems in our system that probably were better addressed between the judges and law enforcement, the public defender's office and the prosecutor's office. Secondly, we're funding, and my intention was never for the Ombudsman to be a long-term role or a long-term solution to this. To me, it was a short term to see what the issues were, what we're having to grapple with. So at this particular time, I think it's probably way too premature. I'd like to see what the final NCSC study says, and then move from there. It would give us an opportunity to come up with a holistic approach, I believe. We might need something more or less from what we're doing now. So that would be my position on it. I appreciate Dr. Adelman's service, and I think he's done a great job, and we've learned a lot, but it's time to move on to bigger things, I think, and more long-term and proactive solutions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Justice Deakins, excuse me. Other comments, Justice Washington?
Yes, thank you. So I had a question about the extended contract. In the report, it said that 84% have already been invoiced, 84% of the 15,000, and that he was asking us to consider 20,000 for an extended contract. I just wanted to know, is that a reasonable number if we've already exhausted 84% of the 15,000? And we're talking about extending the contract for 20,000 through June of 2021.
If I may speak to that? Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I have not yet submitted my invoice for June. So June's invoice will kind of bring that total up to 12,000 and change. And that's since I began in earnest in September, but also in preparation in August. I don't think anybody kind of anticipated that would stretch and reach that far in time. I think the discussions back at the time was maybe a 3-month pilot, a 6-month pilot. It's continued in time. The number that I just put out there, which would be 20,000, that was kind of based on what my average monthly invoices had been, which is about somewhere around 1,500. That's not a precise figure, but to go more or less at the volume and intensity that I've been all along would probably be 20,000 for a full calendar year. I might not expend that all. I didn't expend all the $15,000, but again, that's kind of my best projection, kind of based on month by month by month, ma'am.
Other questions? Justice Yanez.
Thank you, Chairman. I do agree with JP Deacons, like we do need to move forward with something else, but being a leader in the community, I understand the importance of people working in the weeds. And so if we take Mr. Alderman out of the equation, we're back to where we started. And so him, for me, is a level of accountability that we would not have. And so we need his wisdom, we need his judgment, we needed that accountability to move forward. And so when we're moving forward with change, we're gonna need that. We're gonna need him to do that. Otherwise, we're gonna end up where we were if we don't have that accountability in the county. So I would ask my members of this committee if we can pass this on to the full quorum court so we can have a discussion on it and see where he is and how he can support us through these changes. Thank you.
Other comments? I agree with Justice Deakins. I think we might be jumping the gun just a little bit. I mean, we've got the final report coming yet. We've got a whole group of elected officials that have learned a whole bunch in the last 90 to 120 days. And in my conversations, they all talk about how we're going to do things different going forward. And I'm of a mind that we ought to sit tight until we get that report and then discuss this with our other elected officials and see if they can do their job. Are there other comments? If not,
Call the question.
okay. Okay, we're going to vote. The motion is to extend the ombudsman contract for a year at a cost of $20,000. And the motion is to make that recommendation to the quorum court. Okay, all in favor? I think I can see you all. Raise your hands. We have 3 yeses. Those noes, raise your hand. We have 3 yeses, 3 noes. The chairman votes no, the motion fails. We'll go on to item 9, which is public comment. We've got a 12-minute, let me read my notes. We've got a 12-minute public comment period. Each individual is limited to 3 minutes. Mr. Lester, will you take over?
Yes, sir. I will move to the attendees. The first person up had the hand raised from Beth Koger.
Ms. Koger, go ahead, please.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Okay, first of all, I'm kind of scattered here, my comments, but I would respectfully request that the PowerPoint presentation made by the Criminal Justice Assessment Group be posted online and be accessible to the public without having to do a Freedom of Information request. Also, I'd like to mention that the assessment did not address probation and parole. And I would respectfully ask there that someone mention to the group that that is a big area that needs to be addressed. Chief Cantrell said that tonight that that population is up to 45 and it is contributing to the population at the jail. I would also, this is addressed to Sheriff Holder, and whether or not he's still on the line, but I was wondering with respect to those job openings that he has not filled, if one or two, let's say two of those could be dedicated to hire social workers to work in the jail. I think that goes along with the spirit of community policing that the governor's task force is stressing and is working toward. And also with reference to pretrial, when that was mentioned, we were talking, and it was also mentioned, I believe, in the same sentence as probation and parole. But I will remind you that those in pretrial have not been convicted. They're to be presumed innocent. And with reference to the uptrust, I would urge the county to go ahead and pursue that because it doesn't cost, they're offering to do that for free. That's a huge benefit that the county can benefit from. And the fact that they're doing free for a year gives us time to explore, investigate, as JP Johnson mentioned earlier. But waiting on the state, that's a problem because the state has been holding us back from doing that already because they haven't responded. I'd like to see Washington County be an example, and we could set the stage here for others to follow, because in Tulsa County, Oklahoma, when they implemented uptrust, their FDA rate is down to under 10%, and they handle up to 80% of the felonies in Tulsa County. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Brian.
JP Johnson, Sarah Moore has her hand raised.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Moore.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate, this is Sarah Moore in Fayetteville, Arkansas, if you can hear me. I appreciated the comments that Beth Koger made, and I appreciate the National Center for State Courts presentation that they made, but I just wanted to reiterate, I think probation and parole is an area we want to make sure that there's definitely been focus on, and if that's something that was maybe just an oversight being mentioned in that deck, if that could be included and shared with us. But if it's been potentially overlooked in the actual study, I hope that we'll give some thoughtful time and process to that, because we are seeing lots of like technical violations, and we're seeing 90 days that are happening in our facility, as well as 6-month revocations. And so I think it's a big conversation that we probably want to have in our area around probation and parole, and especially given the numbers that were shared with us tonight with the 45 individuals that are currently on PVs. Additionally, I wanted to thank the Sheriff's Office. I don't know who's left on the call. I actually have partnered with St. James Food Pantry here locally in Fayetteville. And we have actually been doing a mobile food pantry delivery. We're up to, I think we're delivering to about 9 neighborhoods now across the Fayetteville area. Many, very low income, people that have mobile issues as far as they may be disabled, they may have issues with transportation. And so we've been servicing almost 300 families every single Tuesday. And a few weeks ago, the Sheriff's Office was kind enough to join us in that effort. And so we've had 4 individuals from the Sheriff's Office joining us. They help us load boxes. We load about 25 vehicles. It's a lot of manual labor. It's hot. Our boxes are about 30 to 40 pounds full of meat and dairy, canned goods and breads and things to go out to our community members. And so I do really want to say thank you for their service and for those individuals that have stepped up and given their time. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Next speaker, please. Mr. Lester.
Mr. Chairman, I don't see any other hands raised.
All right. All right. Well, then without objection, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
JP Pond, the Personnel Committee will begin as soon as you are ready.
Okay, thank you. We don't have a very big agenda. I would be obliged to call this Personnel Committee meeting to order. Ms. Burnett, could you call the roll, please?
Susan Cunningham. She is present. Judith Yanez.
Here.
Present. Lisa Ecke.
Here.
Sam Duncan.
Here.
Chandra Washington.
Here.
Sue Madison. She's muted.
I'm here.
David Vaughn, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Now at this time, I would entertain the motion to adopt the agenda.
I so move.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? We have no opposition. Agenda item number 3, request from Judge Joseph Wood, changing the title of Deputy Director, DEM Educator Grade 18 to Deputy Director, Educator Fire Services Coordinator Grade 19 in the Department of Emergency Management, a budget for 2020. Will there be any discussion on this this request from Judge Wood?
I move we grant the request.
Okay, that would be ordinance.
It doesn't say ordinance on the agenda.
Okay, well, it's 3.2 moves it along to the.
All right. Okay, then I move we send this ordinance to the Quorum Court with a due pass.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I do believe that this is budget neutral and it does not need to go to the Quorum Court for approval, seeing that the money is already in the judge's budget. It just needs to be approved by the personnel. If I'm incorrect, maybe perhaps Attorney Lester will correct me, but this is budget neutral.
Mr. Lester, what say you?
Mr. Chairman, I think that this, the request is for a change in title and a change in grade. And although it is budget neutral because there won't be any money that has to be appropriated, as there's already money in this position to accommodate this, I think due to the fact that it is a change in title and grade, it will have to be approved by the Quorum Court.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is there any further discussion on 3.2? Does anybody see any hands?
Are you mean for public comment?
Is there, if no discussion on the committee or the court, then do we need to go to public comment on this issue?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak about 3.2?
I don't see any hands raised.
We have none on the committee or on the court, or none from the public. All in favor of passing this on to the full quorum court, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? And I hear no opposition. This,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, ma'am.
I move that this be put on a consent agenda.
Thank you. Very good.
Is there a second?
Oh, second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There is none. Agenda item number 4, a request from Assessor Russell Hill, changing the title of Business Personal Property Manager Grade 20 to Business Personal Property Supervisor Grade 19 in the assessor's budget for 2020.
Move to pass item number 4.
We got this is ordinance number 4.2. Did I hear a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Move to pass 4.
Mr. J.P. Duncan has made the motion to pass this on, recommend pass to the full quorum court, I believe. I didn't hear part of it.
Second.
Madison has her hand raised.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to pass this on, do pass to the full quorum court. Is there any discussion? Any discussion from the committee? Any discussion from the other members of the court? Any discussion from the public? Mr. Lester, do we see any hands?
No, sir. I see no hands, Mr. Chairman.
In that case, all in favor of passing 4.2 on to the full quorum court, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Do we need public comment on that?
We asked for it and there was no show of hands from the public.
Okay, then I'm a yes vote. And I will move that we put this on a consent agenda.
Thank you. We have
Second.
We have a second. All in favor of putting this on a consent agenda?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? And there are none. Thank you again, Justice Madison. Agenda item number 5 is a public comment. We have a 12-minute comment period with a 3-minute limit per each individual to comment on items on the agenda. Mr. Lester, do we have a show of hands from anyone from the public?
No, sir. I don't see any show of hands from the public.
In that case, I would be entertaining a motion from the committee to adjourn. Do we have any motion from the committee to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Or did we have any no? We didn't have any no's. This meeting of the Washington County Personnel Committee is adjourned. It's good to see y'all.
JB Harbison, I will unmute everyone as per your request for the meeting of the Finance and Budget Committee.
Okay, do we need a break? Or do we need to go on and start? No break, okay. I have requested that everybody be unmuted for this committee meeting because I think it's important if I should miss someone that they can speak up. All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Finance and Budget Committee, and I'm going to ask Ms. Burnett to do the roll call.
Lance Johnson.
Here.
Susan Cunningham.
Here.
Derek Thomas. Judith Yanez.
Here.
Patrick Dickens. Here. Lisa Ecke.
Here, if y'all could unmute me, I've been muted the whole personnel committee, so I'd appreciate if I stayed unmuted. Thank you.
Doing.
Sam Duncan.
Here.
Chandra Washington. I see she's here.
Everybody should be unmuted.
Eva Madison.
Here.
Andrea Jenkins.
Here.
Suki Hires. Sue Madison. I see she's here. Willie Lemming.
Present.
Ann Harbison.
Here.
And Butch Pond.
Here.
JP Harbison, we have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Is there any, okay, we need adoption of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move to adopt agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the adoption of the agenda. All right, our treasurer's report, Bobby Hill. Are you on, Bobby?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. Go right into 3.1 Treasurer Summary. Had a pretty good month, everything considered. Look at 1,000 general expenditures were over revenues about 2 to 1, which is about right for the summer doldrums as far as revenue goes. Look down at the 2000 road department. They brought in about what they spent. We did get news from the grant department that They're confident that within a couple of months, maybe or sooner, we will get $850,000 from FEMA. So our fingers are crossed on that. Down to 3017 jail. About the same. They brought in about what they spent. Are losing a little bit of ground just from the prisoner fees and prisoner reimbursement. But as you'll see in a minute, the sales tax hasn't taken a big hit yet, but we'll see about that as we go on down the road. At the bottom of the next page, we began the month with 33.8 million in the bank and ended the month with 33.2. Let's see, 3.2 revenue comparisons through June 30th compared 2020 to 2019. See at the far right over there, the difference 500,000 for the general fund less than 2019. That is mostly due to property tax statements going out later than usual. We've already got it in for this month, which is not reflected in this report, but we were 565,000 over last year. So we've caught up on that. So we're good. And about the same for the road, the property taxes for this month has kind of caught us up. So if you look down at the expenditures, minus is a good thing on the expenditures. The road department, see 1.3 million, that's due to them not having to spend a lot of money on FEMA repairs this year. 3.3, 1 cent sales tax. This was really a surprising good news. Most of the shutdowns, of course, were in April, and this is the report, June report, but it's for April collections, and we were down less than 1%. So I would think that April would be the low water mark. Of course, like I said, cases are rising, so we don't know what the future is going to hold, but right now that's the low water mark. So I expect it to at least stay flat for a while and not dip too far into what we were thinking it was going to. 3.4, the quarter-cent jail tax, same situation, is down less than 1%. Both the 1 cent and the quarter-cent, still for the year, we're just under 6% growth. So everything considered, we can't hardly complain about that. 3.5, same thing I did last month, just comparing different types of businesses. Everything is about what I expected, except for the full service, the restaurants and other eating places. That actually went up 16.5%. I was very surprised at because everything was, all the inside was shut down, so the takeout brought in enough to offset that. So that was surprising to me. Of course, the e-shopping was way over last year, and groceries and other merchandise. 3.6, road, a 1/2 cent state. This is the state sales tax, no groceries involved. And you saw it took a little bit of a hit, -7, almost 7.5% under last year at this time. We have already received July's, that's not reflected. And surprisingly, again, it's up over 2%. So next month, this report will show it up over 2%. So that was very surprising to me. But again, this is from April, the low water mark, in my opinion. But again, we'll have to see how things go. Cautiously optimistic, I guess, is the phrase we should use in the next few months. And finally, the radio system sales tax began July 1st. So collections are already started. So, and we'll get our first money in September. And that is all I have.
Do we have any questions for Treasurer Hill? Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.
I'm glad to see it's not as bad as we thought it might be, but I think we need to be very cautious until we see another couple of months. All right, thank you. We're ready for our insurance report from Nelson Driver. Nelson, are you on?
Can you hear me, Ann?
Yes.
Okay. Just to give you a brief report. As of June the 1st, the going in side of the health fund, we had $2,852,361 in the fund. We ended June the 30th with 2.9, a little over 2.9 million. One of the things that you'll see, the trend since the end of 2019 through the first 5 months of 2020, is we have eroded the balance of the fund to the tune of about $250,000 to $300,000. That's a negative situation.
This is here.
Okay.
See, he's gone now.
Sorry. Can y'all hear me okay?
No, we can't.
Okay.
I can hear him.
I can hear him. I can hear.
I can hear.
Well, it's fading in and out here.
JP Harbison, you were frozen for a minute too. So it might be connectivity.
Oh, okay.
Make sure you're plugged in good.
Do you need me to start over?
Continue on.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anyway, the average balance of the fund has dropped a couple of $100,000, which makes me kind of uncomfortable. We have recovered a little bit over the last 30 days, but not enough that makes me feel like we're in a positive trend. One of the reasons that we're seeing these types of numbers this year is in the first 5 months of the year, we have had over $720,000 in high dollar claims paid out to 10 individual issues. 3 of those were employee claims, 7 were dependent claims, totaling over $720,000. Only one of these claims has hit our cap, and this year the cap is at $250,000. So anything over that one that goes over 250 will go to our excess insurance. These other 9 have not hit the cap yet. So right now we don't know what what it's going to look like a month from now or 6 months from now. It's a wait and see. Mr. Watson and I are taking a look at the fund and taking a look at some of the ins and outs in different scenarios from the funding side of this to see what alterations may need to be made once we get a better set of numbers in. Once we get the June numbers, we won't have those until about the 20th to the 25th of this month. Once we get the first 6 months in, we'll have a little bit better footing to be able to predict what might occur during the last 6 months. So I know this is not the news that you wanted to hear, but you need to be up to date on it and understand, where these claims are coming from. Does anybody have any questions?
I just have a comment, and the comment is, we want the budgets in at the end of August like we did last year for the upcoming budget for 2021. So, if you have any recommendations, we would like to have them at that time if necessary.
Well, one thing that I would add is that this is bid year. This is bid year for the third-party administration services, the group life insurance, and the group dental insurance part of our plan. Those do not go out to bid until the end of September. Those won't be back in until the end of, they got the beginning of September. They won't come back in until the end of September. So we really won't have any bid numbers for you as far as the service fees until early October.
Okay, well, we don't have control over that. So we'll just have to wait till September or October for you to come in and do your budget presentation then.
I'll be able to give you some close ballpark estimates, Justice Harbison, but I can't get it nailed down dollar for dollar until after these come in.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Driver? Seeing none, thank you. We appreciate your work.
You're welcome.
All right, we're ready for our controller, Shannon Worthen. Shannon, are you on?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. 5.1 is the unappropriated reserve balance report, reflecting the changes in the balances from the June ordinances, and general fund balance is at $5,472,175, and then the jail fund $1,276,818 for a net general fund of $4,195,357. 5.2, the summary of operations and expenses, fund and department. And 6 months in, we added expenses are linear. We should be at about 50% for the year. And if you go to page 13 for the overall general fund, we're at 46%. Then you skip over to page 18. The total for all the county was at 47.2%. So everything looks to be about where it should be. That's all I had for today.
Okay. Are there any questions? If not, are there any questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Worthen, for your report.
You're welcome.
We're right where we should be, middle of the year at 47%. All right, we're ready to go on to new business. Number 6, 6.1 is an ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $46,113 in the Office of the Justice Programs OJP Grant Fund and appropriating $46,113 to the following line items in the CARES Act budget for the OJP Grant Fund for 2020. All right, this is some COVID monies to be used for supplies.
Move to pass.
Second.
All right, we got a motion to pass and a second. All those, is there any public comment? Is there any support? All those in favor say, okay, JP Eva Madison. I can't hear you. You're supposed to be unmuted. You have to unmute yourself. Said it won't unmute.
Thank you. It says the host is not allowing people to unmute themselves. So I don't know what's going on. I just wanted to make sure I was on. I don't have a comment. I just wanted to be able to vote.
Okay, thank you. It looks like JP Deakins is muted and Yanez also. Because I requested that everybody be unmuted for this committee meeting.
That was my fault. I had muted myself back, so I had no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. All right, so this will be passed on to the full Quorum Court. All right, number 7, an ordinance anticipating additional revenue of $399,996 in the drug court grant fund and appropriating the amount of $399,996 from the drug court grant fund to the 2021 grant budget. All right, all those, this is the grant that Judge Beaumont gets every year. So are there any questions?
Pass.
Second.
All those,
Second.
is there any public comment? Hearing no public comment, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no.
No.
Ayes.
JP Harbison, I would make a motion that the prior 2 items be placed on a consent agenda.
Okay.
Second.
They will be placed on the consent agenda. All right, we're on item number 8, an ordinance recognizing revenue in the amount of $15,000 in the court security grant fund and appropriating $15,000 from the court security grant fund to various line items in the court security grant budget for 2020. All right, that's 8.1.
Move to pass.
Second.
Is there any public comment? Hearing none, all those, is there any comment from anyone on the court? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. All right, 8.1 is passed. All right. Number 9 is the sweep. And an ordinance de-appropriating surplus amounts from full-time salaries for various departments and restoring those amounts to unappropriated reserves as required by the 2020 budget controls for the first 2 quarters of 2020. This was about 500, just a minute, 10.
No.
All right, that was 225,000 for the general. Now, if you look, there are other monies that was used for salaries that did not come out of general, and that money has been put back into the appropriate fund. The total amount saved during this period was over $1 million. All right. Do I hear a motion to pass this on to the full court? Second.
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion? Public comment? All right. All those.
JP Harbison, we
Yes.
do have.
What?
You have a public comment
Oh, I do.
from Beth Koger.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
Okay, my comment is I'm curious to know if some of these are because people left employment of the county or they were just jobs that weren't filled. Is that what we're talking about?
Both.
Yes, both situations. I'm sure you would have to go back to the HR to see if they left or that job was never filled, or some people retired or left and those jobs are never filled. So I would say that would be 90%.
Okay. Okay. Well, I guess my comment then would be we don't really save money when we lose good employees if they go because they're not being compensated well or something like that. That I really don't think we save money because we lose money after they've been trained. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Any comments from the court? All those in favor of passing this on to Quorum Court say aye. Those opposed? All right, motion's passed. An ordinance appropriate, okay, we're on number 10. An ordinance appropriating $225,973 from unappropriated reserves to the building and grounds budget for state fire code required upgrades to various county buildings.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I had received late word from the judge's office that this ordinance, these issues had been resolved and this monies were no longer needed. So I don't know what the appropriate motion is, maybe to take this off the agenda.
Well, we should have taken it off the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. I was not notified that this needed to come.
Jamie Harbison, you can't see my hand raised.
No, I can't see you.
I also received, what this is that the fire marshal, I guess, Tyler, from back in 2014, the fire marshal did not have the county buildings inspected. So for the purpose of looking at all of the fire safety issues in all the county buildings, this proposal was for upgrades, not for required outdated services. So I'm in agreement with Justice Deakins that this does not need to be voted on and it needs to be just dismissed from the agenda. And so I would like to make a proper motion that this be disregarded from the agenda and not voted on.
But we already passed the agenda.
Right. We passed.
Well, then, well, that's fine.
Okay, let me ask.
This would just be for upgrades recommended, not necessary.
JP Harbison, would we maybe just table it indefinitely?
I think that would be appropriate to table it, and therefore, if it needs to come off, it can come off the.
Therefore,
next.
with all due respect, Chairman, I would like to table this item for
Second.
All right.
Undisclosed date.
Okay, thank you. All
Thank
right.
you, ma'am.
Is there any further discussion? You'll just have to speak up because I don't have it. Oh, there, I've got it now. A view of everybody. Okay, JP Lemming.
I just want to make it clear and I think Lisa said it well. I think this is just something they want to do because when you build a building in 1930, you go by 30 codes. When you build a building in 2020, you go by 2020 codes. So I just want to make sure, I think Patrick we've took this off. Are they thinking about bringing it back and thinking about getting money elsewhere? I think this has got to do with Johnson Controls, and I'm trying to figure it all out.
Well, it's on the agenda and I was not notified, or I don't think Eddie Burnett. Eddie, I mean, you're the Quorum Court here.
Okay, well, if we're going to table it.
Okay, we're going to table it and therefore we'll deal with it later or it will stay tabled. All right.
I hope it stays tabled. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? All right. Then everyone in favor of tabling this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, it's tabled then till further action. All right, public comment. Do we have any public? Okay, JP Washington.
JP Harbison, when Justice Eva Madison made the motion for those two items to go on the consent agenda, she made the motion, someone seconded, but we didn't vote on that.
Right. Oh, we didn't. Maybe we need to go back and vote on those two items for the consent agenda. All those in favor of putting those two items on the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, thank you, JP Washington. All right, any other comments? All right, we've got public comment, 12 minutes, 3-minute limit for each individual. Is there anyone who wants to make a public comment? All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Yes, JP Jenkins.
Thank you, Butch.
What?
Nothing.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Be safe.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Be safe.
I'm bringing my kitty next time.
You should. Todd wanted to join. He's 14 years old. He's an old man.
Oh.
He was meowing, so I had to get him up on my lap so he wouldn't interrupt us.
Well, thank you.